everyone. I'm Seth Adrian Romo from Pages and Panels, and today I'm super excited to be talking with Marcus Williams. Marcus Williams is an illustrator, writer, and co-creator, a longtime lover of video games, comic art, and all things animated. Marcus dedicated his young artistic years to fine-tuning his illustration muscles by way of freelancing, and over 18 plus years later, he's catching his stride and still ever growing in hopes of being a well-rounded illustrator. His character design career started with working with studios like Cartoon Network, drawing the Powerpuff Girls, but readied him for working with media giants like Marvel, Sony Pictures Animation, Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon, and Anime, to name a few. Marcus put to name a few in his bio, but that's already amazingly impressive. This all eventually pushed him towards co-creating and publishing his own comic series, Tuskegee Air's Flames of Destiny, which is out now. And Marcus, you have another comic coming out with Massive Publishing, a Popeye
Yes,
title.
that is correct.
Yeah, so
That is correct.
but before we get into that, I know you talked about your background. Let's dive into your experience with comics.
Okay,
Uh how was that kind of growing up? I heard in previous interviews part of that was seeing Jim Lee titles on stands. How
absolutely.
how was that going forward? How's your journey been to now?
I've always drawn. I was as earliest memories. I was drawing on furniture, getting in trouble for that. I had this yellow chair, this plastic yellow chair, that I used permanent marker on. I thought it was fantastic. My mom was not impressed, and I got a whipping for that. But I just never was satisfied with just, looking at someone else's doing amazing work. I watched cartoons, I played video games, and I'm like, wow, how do they do that? And so I would try. I was terrible, for a long time as a kid, but it didn't stop me from continuously just being inspired by characters I saw in media and entertainment. So long story short, fast forward, and I'm like 6 or 7 years old, and a neighbor of mine, he comes over and he's talking about Wolverine. I'm like, what's a Wolverine? What are you talking about? What is this? And he's like, you don't know who Wolverine is, dude? I was like, nah, I don't know what that is. So he presents me a Jim Lee comic, X-Men comic, issue number 4, I believe, where it has the split between Wolverine and Omega Red.
Hmm.
And I'd never seen anything like it. And so my young 7-year-old brain was like, what? Why do they look so cool? And how are the women all attractive? And how come he can heal after he gets hit? And how does he have knives coming out of his hands? So I was just awestruck, man. The style, the impact of all just fantastic anatomy and all this stuff. I had never seen that. I'm coming off of the heels of Street Fighter. I saw character art like that. I saw Ninja Turtles on TV.
Mhm.
Nothing looked like that in my repertoire. So I was just like, yeah, I want to draw like this now. So comics became this far off, martial art that, imagine seeing Bruce Lee kick a whole bunch of people's butt, just in passing. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. So it was like this hidden art that I could not render. I could not draw like it to save my life. So, but it didn't stop me. I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out one day. I'm gonna draw this stuff, bump cartoons, bump Looney Tunes, bump Sonic the Hedgehog right now. I love Ninja Turtles, but bump them. It doesn't look cool like that. They don't have, attractive women like this. So yeah, it took my 7-year-old brain and just said, plug into this and keep trying to draw like this. And so that was where that journey in comics started.
Now you ended up drawing Powerpuff Girls first. How was
Oh,
that sort of progress? Because how did you end up landing that career? Because from what I've
okay.
heard in other interviews, you got that relatively early.
Yes, and by all shades of luck, and that's not normal. The way I got it was not normal. So if from that 7-year-old, let's just fast forward to, I graduated high school. I had been drawing. I think I got my skill to draw right around
Mhm.
11th, 10th, 11th grade. I was decent. High school, I was decent. I was pretty okay. Everyone knew I could draw. My teachers knew I was going to ignore notes in class to draw. So um, I did have skill in high school. I wasn't the best, but got through high school. I did do a program called Governor's Honors. in 11th grade, it was this program here in Georgia. I'm not sure where else they have it, but it was like if you specialized in anything or if you were good at anything in high school, mine was art. You competed locally. If you won the competition locally, they go higher competitions and so forth, national, weird stuff, statewide. And I won the opportunity to go to a college campus in Valdosta State, Georgia. Um, Valdosta State University is where I went. But yeah, you got to actually train and or be educated by a college level professor in the thing that you excelled at in high school. So mine
Oh,
was
that's
art.
cool.
It
Yeah.
was it was it was fun. I didn't want to do it. I fought my teacher tooth and nail. I was like it was 6 week program. I mean, I skipped all of my summer vacation playing video games and stuff. So I
Oh, it
didn't
was
want to
over
do it.
summer. Oh, wow.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it was like ooh, she drugged me tooth and nail to do it. But I ended up, winning statewide, and I got to go for 6 week. I had painting, sculpting, sketching, drawing, right? And this old lady, very cantankerous, she had me for 1 week, dude, and she absolutely rendered everything I'd learned useless. And she's like, "Stop it, you're doing it wrong." I was like, "What? I'm like the best in my class, lady. What are you talking about? I'm pretty good, right?" And so in that week, though, she retaught me from like the ground up how to sketch, how to
Hmm.
build a drawing, how to capture the essence of what you're seeing and render it quickly, but accurately. And so in that week, my arm was sore by the time I was done. That was the very first like true to life tutelage. Like I was being trained. I was an apprentice for only 1 week, but it was enough. Like I was completely open to it. Like I was like, okay, I suck. Teach me how you draw. And in that week, I got officially trained, and I've been drawing that way ever since. So sketching and building things, I use her method. Um, that was the only training I got. But after that, I graduated high school and I started doing odd jobs. I'm working at the movie theater, and yes, the woman I would go on to marry, I knew her in high school, but she comes up to the movie theater. She's like, "Hey, you're still drawing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still drawing. Been drawing on napkins while I work." She's like, "You should meet my uncle." I'm like, "That's weird. Why should I meet your uncle?" And she's like, "He's the art director here in Atlanta at Cartoon Network." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I get off at 3. Let's go meet your uncle." And we did, and I brought my little sketch. I was not professional in any shape or form. I just had a sketchbook. I show him my sketchbook. I meet him. He's cool. It's the first professional African American artist I've ever met.
Hmm.
Up to this point in my life, I'd never met a professional working artist. And so, as an art director, he looks at my sketchbook. He's like, "Yeah, you're pretty good, man. I can get you some work. Have you heard of the Powerpuff Girls?" I'm like, "No, what's that?" And he shows me the intro to the Powerpuff Girls. And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I can draw that. Some wop-headed girls, no fingers. What's the big deal?" But he then mentions he's like, the studio was having a trouble finding artists to actually match the style
Hmm.
on model, So he gives me some pencil tests, some ink tests, and I turn them all in instantly. Like I do them and bring them back. He's like, "Okay, these are pretty good." Long story short, get the job, and I'm doing cleanup, just pencil cleanups for Powerpuff Girls comics. They were fantastically successful with the cartoon at the time. This is like 99, 2000.
Hmm.
And the cartoon was off the charts, but they were trying to get some comics in. But their staff and studio up at Cartoon Network, they were all kind of bogged down. So I came in as a freelancer. That was my first freelance job, and it was paying so well. And I was like, I like getting paid money for art. This is fantastic. So that's where I started. But that, like I said, completely lucky. That is not how you normally get those jobs. You have to apply or
Yeah.
put in submissions and things, and then they tell you if you're good or not or move. There's a lot of people trying to work for that company, so I got into the back, slipped into the, got my foot in the door, and then went on to marry that woman and stuff. But no, that was the start of my freelance career officially. That was like my first official art job.
Man, I can only imagine. I'm glad you went to work that day.
Yes.
Can you imagine if you had called in sick?
Yes, absolutely,
Well,
absolutely.
I would trust that fate would still take you right in the same direction, but
I
still, that's a luck is what the phrase is when skill meets opportunity. So clearly
Right,
you were ready.
right.
So that's amazing. I don't want to jump too ahead, but
Yeah.
drawing the the Powerpuff Girls, one thing I've
Yep.
noticed in your art style is you're very amazing at kind of adding that fluidity of motion and energy.
Oh,
And
thank
it's
you.
interesting that you started with Powerpuff Girls because their whole style is like the whoosh lines behind them and like
Right.
everything's very like hyper stylized. And so as someone who's non-artistic, I could say I can see how that style still resonates with what you have today. But we'll get into the art in just a minute. So,
Mhm.
you know, you work at Cartoon Network, then you go on to create your own comic book called Tuskegee Airs, which
Right.
is about the generations after the Tuskegee Airmen from World War II, but it's their grandkids, I believe.
No, we
Or
didn't. We didn't want to disrespect the actual real life living
uh-huh.
heirs of the Tuskegee because there's a lot of them. They're out there.
Yeah.
They are. Oh, my great grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman. Me and Greg Burnham, we co-write the story. We came up with the concept, but we definitely were like, how do we not piss people off
Yeah,
by
yeah,
doing
yeah.
this, and how do we do it in paying homage to
hmm
what they did and not trying to leverage and take advantage of we're going to call ours Tuskegee Airmen second class. No, we didn't want to do that. So we specifically said let's not make them blood relatives. This
Ah,
this
okay.
this cast of new pilots, they are just new kids
Just new
and
generation.
new generation of pilots, they
Yeah.
are being trained by a descendant of the Tuskegee Airmen. Right. We never give a last name. Colonel Mars is their sensei, their master splinter, so to speak.
hmm
But they are not blood descendants. They are inheriting the legacy, is what we use, and that's in our pitch. These kids are inheriting the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen, ergo Tuskegee heirs. So that's where we pushed it way into the future. It's like the year 2096, and they're practicing in the P-51 Mustangs. The Red Tails flew. They're just refurbished. It's a long time since, but they are being absolutely led down the same path and same values as the Tuskegee Airmen. So they highly value and look up to the history and awesomeness of the Tuskegee Airmen themselves.
hmm
But we didn't want to do anything but pay homage to. So those kids, everything they're doing, all the logic, all of the things that they do as a team, how they stick together, how they support one another. It's based on the Tuskegee Airmen, but they're gonna get some amazing jets that also transform into giant robots. So, we have martial arts in there. We have geography. They're gonna travel the world. There's missions take them all over the place. And there's technology and there's robots and there's history, and none of it feels like it's anything we've ever seen before, on TV, comic, or anything. So we're like, we would watch this as like yesterday. If this was on any kind of channel or streaming thing, we'd watch it. We'd digest it. So yeah, that's where we started Tuskegee Airs. But that's me and Greg have been working together almost 10 plus years before Tuskegee Airs came up. So it was a long time coming, but that's where all of that freelance from 2000 on up to 2015.
hmm
Me and Greg created a comic back in 2021. I'm sorry, 2001. It didn't make sense. Back in 2001, we created a comic called Starving Artist. He was already writing it, but he needed an artist. A mutual friend of ours put us together, and we started coming up with it, working it out, printed it. We had no idea what the hell we were doing, so we had terrible business strategy on that one, but we finished it. We printed it out at Kinko's at the time. I know young people don't know what Kinko's is, but it was like a print place. And we
I
stapled
have
it
gray in
together.
my beard, so I know what Kinko's is.
Right.
Before it just
So,
became FedEx.
exactly. FedEx off. It was, but yeah, we self-published that and put it in a store under consignment with the manager, and he put our comic next to Marvel and DC comic. He had a comic section. And sure enough, it's sold out. We had no social media back then. We told no one that we were going to put this in the store, and it's sold out. The problem was our business. We had no idea what the hell we were doing. So it was costing us $10 to self print this thing, and
hmm
we were selling it on consignment at $4.
Oh, geez.
So we were getting a portion of that $4. So every time he was like, "Hey man, I need some more of those comics." Like, as soon as they sold out, a day or two later, Yeah, Greg gets the call and he's like, "Hey man, I need more of those comics. Bring like five more. That's $50 for us."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Yay!"
Yeah.
We're not getting that money back. So, but it did teach us self-publishing. We
Yeah.
can reach our market directly. We have no idea who bought those books or why, or if they enjoyed them, but no marketing, no publishing, nothing. It's just someone went in and bought 10 plus versions of this book and left with it. So but we did learn we didn't know what the hell we were doing. So, fast forward, 15 years later, I did enough work, and I actually did work on a comic called Hero Cats of Stellar City that helped me to understand publishing and getting it out to the market. I started doing comic conventions during that time. That was closer to 2012, 2013, 2014. So I learned the business of publishing, and then I came back to Greg. I was like, "Hey, Brett, I know how to do publishing." Uh, and so we Tuskegee Airs was never a conversation we had. We never talked about it. We never came up with that. Before that point, we were actually working on something for television, and then a random conversation. I had done Greg's children's books. He had two children's books. We were doing a signing at a mall here in Georgia. An older guy comes up. He's like, "Hey man, you got anything with aviation? These kids don't know nothing about aviation. If you." And I was doing Young Heroes, where I would take Marvel, DC, and other popular superheroes that were black and brown, and I would just make them young. So I had a series of posters called Young Heroes. So
Hmm.
young Luke Cage, young Storm, young, Green Lantern, things like that. And I was like, well, I was thinking about doing some young Tuskegee Airmen for my Young Heroes line. And so Greg was sitting right there. He's like, "Yo, we need to write that." After we had the conversation, the guy got excited. "Oh yeah, if you do that, that'd be dope." And Greg was like, "We should write that up." And I'm like, "Write what up?" He's like, "A story about the young Tuskegee Airmen." You know, 2 weeks later, man, we came up with the premise, the name. We put it in the future. I was like, "If it's in the future, we get giant robots."
Yeah.
Yeah. So it came together organically, but also it was lightning in a bottle, man. It was just something that, again, I did as much research as we could during that planning phase. Me and Greg was I think just talking for like a week, and I'm googling Tuskegee Airmen comic, Tuskegee Airmen futuristic, any nothing, man. It was nothing that even resembled it. So we did a Kickstarter in 2015, going into 2016 February.
And I heard it was wildly successful.
It was,
Y'all,
yeah.
y'all, y'all, y'all made what, 10 times over what your goal was,
Oh
I
yeah.
believe?
Oh yeah. Our goal was just 10 grand. But we ended up getting like 74,000.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
it was awesome. So we were
Yeah.
jumping all over the place, and it was amazing. So it's the kind of stuff to where it's not validation as much as it is, this is a lane that has not and still is not being catered to. And
Hmm.
it's not to say people don't want it. They'll throw money at something that is needed and necessary and valuable. If it's
Yeah.
done correctly, if it's done with the right purpose, it's a no-brainer business wise. So, but that took a long time to get to that point. But we started there.
Yeah, I will admit I have not had a chance to read it yet, but I always look for titles where there's what I would describe as an authentic voice behind it.
Yeah.
Because the whole purpose for me is behind the whole pages and panels concept is there's a lot of amazing comic books on stands. There are a lot of amazing characters that represent different demographics of different kinds.
Mhm.
But then when you look at who's writing them and
Right.
who's the artist behind it,
Right.
you start to wonder, was there anyone in the room to maybe give guidance on what that character really truly experienced?
Right.
So I always think it's amazing when there are creators who are putting love and care into properties that they're like, hey, this is something that I feel like I can give a true voice to that, again, no offense to anyone with the last name Smith, but it's not some guy named Smith coming up with
Right.
his title, it's someone who's putting in the care and attention. So I absolutely love that. So it's definitely high on my to read title or to
Yeah.
read list.
Yes.
And I'll have to put links to it because where can people access that right now? I know we're going to talk about Popeye in a minute, but I
Sure.
wanted to at least cover Tuskegee Airs because when I heard you talk about it, I'm like, oh, I want to hear more about it.
Right, right, right. No, Tuskegee Airs, and that's Heirs,
Hmm.
TuskegeeAirs.com is our website. You can order directly from our website.
Perfect. Awesome.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you look at the art style, your specific art style, I feel like there's a lot of inspiration that probably has brought about that. Can you
Oh yeah.
talk to me about your inspiration in different medium? I feel like anime is probably something that might have influenced your style from what I see a little bit. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that has been like as a journey from, when you
Yeah.
started to now? Because you started looking at X-Men comics and now you have your own distinct style, which is amazing. So how has that grown?
Well, again, I started before I got to comics. It was, animation, Looney Tunes, and any cartoon that was Disney, anything that was visually showing characters, I was right there in front of it. So television, cartoons, movies, all of that stuff was important. I tried to draw everything I saw. We just, come from a time where digital playback wasn't that easy. You had to get
Hmm.
VHS or you had to pause it at the right time. So,
Hmm.
I would beg to rent things and I try to pause it and I just, try to my best at rendering what I saw, but I was terrible. But no, it started from video games, the game manuals that used to come in the game box,
Yeah, we used to get that.
you know what I
You
mean?
used to
Like,
open it up and you'd read it at school,
yes.
excited to play the video game when you got home. Now you don't get
Exactly.
anything.
No, it's all digital, but that is what I would stick in my book bag and I would
Hmm.
steal it away and I would get to school. Street Fighter, when Street Fighter came out, that was full of character art and it was better than anything I could draw. So I would like literally rigorously try my best and I got marginally better over time. Again, I was self-taught at that age. I didn't have any, a formal teaching or anything like that, but it didn't stop me if I wasn't good. I was better than most kids in class because I was doing it so much. But, everything I can get my eyes on, man, was inspiration. So when I finally got to comics, there was this whole new universe of different styles.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't get to anime or to manga, Japanese comics until much later because where could I buy that from? There was no anime section back then in any comic shop. Um, so when I finally, that's like Ninja Scroll, when I finally got to rent something that had anime, Ninja Scroll was the first thing I rented. But I saw Dragon Ball Z. I was like, why do they all look the same? They were Super Saiyans on this big banner. I was like, what the hell? They all look the exact same. This is dumb.
Yeah,
That's
just
stupid.
some have
I didn't
deeper widow's peaks than the other.
I didn't know what I was looking at. And in hindsight, I'm like, oh, they were Super Saiyans. They all had yellow hair. I didn't know Toriyama's style. Look, everyone looks similar. But either way, I didn't get it because I was like, that's dumb. I want character art, character design. So Ninja Scroll was the first VHS anime that I took home and I was able to watch like multiple times. I was probably too young to watch it. Didn't matter. But yeah, it's like the comic stuff. When my mom would allow me to, spend some money on it. Oh man, Jim Lee was along. He was a rock star at that time. Image came along.
Hmm.
Spawn came along, and so everything I drew didn't matter if it was Care Bears, teddy bears, anything was gritty, dark, and sketchy, and all that darkness from Spawn. I actually had a teacher that was like concerned because I think I did it on an assignment, and it was like this little teddy bear, but he was surrounded by darkness, and it was like
Oh
he was on
my
the
God.
swing. But that's who I was studying at the time, artistically,
Yeah.
and so Greg Capullo was a huge, huge inspiration. I have tons of Spawn comics, but then Joe Madureira, Joe Mad, started drawing X-Men
Hmm.
and I just I was in Chicago, um, C2E2 Comic Con, and that is where I started. I found some of those old comics. This is what 96.
Oh
When
wow.
he had hit his stride by that point, but he was doing X-Men. Oh my God. I studied Joe Mad probably the most because I'm like, if it was Joe drawing it, I wanted to buy it. And I got okey doked a few times. I'd see Joe's cover, and on the inside it was somebody else. I was like, ah, scrap. I don't want this. So but yeah, anytime I would find a new artist that really pushed me to say, wow, this is amazing. Joe literally hit the X-Men, industry like a whirlwind. Like he was combining Eastern comic art influence and energy and motion and all that stuff with Western comics. So that's where his style sat. And I was like, this is amazing. And a lot of people did. A lot of people followed his work, loved it, and tried to imitate. And I just knew I never wanted to be an imitation of the art that I was studying from. And if you know anything like about Bruce Lee, he had three masters or three that he grew up training with. But then when he finally got on his own, he created his own, martial art called Jeet Kune Do, and he took elements from what he learned, put in elements from what he wanted to incorporate. So my journey as an artist has been an amalgamation of everything I've been influenced by visually, which helped me with freelance. This is why I could draw Powerpuff Girls, and they were having trouble finding artists that could draw like draw that style. It's most artists, they get locked in to one thing and they get good at that one thing. But I tell young artists all the time, man, cartooning is like jazz. You know the rules, but you break the rules on purpose. And it's not easy if you've come from a traditional art background, learning the rules and stick to the rules and don't do this and don't do that. This is good, this is wrong. Jazz is like free form. So cartooning is free form. You can change and distort and pull and push based on what you're trying to achieve. Comedy, fear, goofiness, whatever it is. So all of these different inspirations live in my head rent free now. So I can combine, cartooning with comic. I can do realistic. I did portraits for 4 years. It was boring. But if I need to, I can combine, cartooning with portrait. So it feels Pixar-ish if I want to. So there is no one style. A lot of people was like, oh, I had to learn the color because coloring wasn't something that I really was passionate about. But when digital coloring came along, I saw where I wanted to be. And I was like, how the hell are they doing this? Ugh, why is this light over here? How did they get this? And so
Hmm.
I've been training myself, studying other artists, but that's still a part of my journey. So you'll see inspiration from other artists and other colorists because I wanted to elevate myself. Again, I'm always trying to incorporate if it's a new skill, if it's something that enhances my work, and if it's more affordable for me to learn it than to hire somebody to do it. I go to sleep later, but I can do it now.
Hmm.
So that's been my journey as an artist. I'm trying to constantly. It's Goku's journey, is what I like to say.
If
It's
only you had
Goku.
that pod, you can kind of study for a year and not
Oh, the
actually lose time.
hyperbolic time dramer. Yes, I would love that. But yeah, it's much slower in real life and much more frustrating. Because it does take sometimes years. I've been digitally coloring for years for the purpose of comics, but now I can incorporate that everywhere and go so many different directions with it. But yeah, it's for people that don't know Dragon Ball Z, it's like along Goku's journey, he would get a new sensei or a new move or a
Hmm.
new something and incorporate that. And so now his repertoire of all of his different moves now, Kaioken and Super Saiyan and, teleport and all this stuff. Now he can just choose. And based on what opponent, he can use all of them. He can use some of them, and things like that. So that's what I liken my journey artistically to, because I'm still adding new stuff.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I think what's to kind of go to your current project, what I
Yes.
find really fascinating is you're incorporating all these different styles. You have your own, like you said, unique modern take where you are incorporating different skills that you've learned. You have your own distinct style, and
Mhm.
now you are applying that to
Yeah.
a legacy character of
Right.
Popeye,
Right.
which I think is such a perfect combination because if there's any character who needs to have the same level of energy, just dynamic scenes,
Right.
it's Popeye. If you're thinking of, characters like that. So
Right.
kind of jumping into the new title,
Yeah.
ah, you know, what can readers expect from it? What are you most excited about it? There was a free comic book day
Yes.
issue. I did pick it up. I loved it. It was great.
Awesome.
Um,
Awesome.
but what are you most excited about that you're bringing to the character of
Yeah.
Popeye?
Well, it started with some fan art. I do fan fictions often because I'm a character designer. So oftentimes I'll take something that I loved when I was a kid, and I'm like, wouldn't it be cool or wouldn't it be dope if Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory was now in his 20s, and I'll just figure out what would look good stylistically and put a fan fiction together. And the way I do fan fictions is I'll, start with an image that introduces what I'm talking about. I'll write two or three paragraphs, and the next one that supports this fan fiction is another 3 to 4 paragraphs or so on and so forth. So I'll end up with like 5 to 6 posters that showcase this is what I'm talking about. So another good example was I did Old Ninjas, which was, if the Ninja Turtles were allowed to be the age they were, 40 years ago, if they were allowed to age up, they'd be somewhere in their 50s or 60s or something now. So it started with Raph just wearing a DMX shirt because that's when DMX
Awesome.
passed away, and I didn't have anything in mind to write, but I just said RIP DMX.
And
Everybody
Raph would
loved,
listen to DMX, let's
you
be
know what I mean? They're
real.
from New
He
York. They're
would. He
from New
would.
York. But every the overwhelming reply to that was, "Yo, where's the rest of the turtles? Where's Leo? Where's Donnie? Where's Mikey?" I'm like,
Hmm.
"You're right." And I just drew the rest of them, but I wrote 3 to 4 paragraphs to say, where are they at in their 50s? And where are they at now? And what's happened? And are they still, where story wise? So take Popeye, for instance. I did some fan art, did a fan fiction of him and Goku as if they had just finished fighting, and I did a fan fiction about Dragon Ball Z crossing over with Popeye. Simple. It made sense. 2 years go by, and the people that own the rights to Popeye saw that, and I gave Popeye, a little upgrade, a little polish. So
Hmm.
he's not, built like a tube guy. He has muscles. He has like
Hmm.
abs. He has like, biceps. And so Alex on that team up there at King Features, he's like, yeah, we want 10 pages, man, of your Popeye. I'm like, cool. What do you want it to be about? He was like, we thought you could write it if you want to write. I'm like, I can write it. At that time I'd already done Tuskegee Years and other stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, we had a lot of great conversations about what I would want to bring to Popeye. Now I'm a huge Popeye fan. We got to start there. That's the whole point of me saying fan fictions. As a fan of Popeye, I grew up watching the cartoons, black and white, color, you name it. And I'm like, dude, he was the original Dragon Ball Z and
Hmm.
fight cartoons and beat him up. If anime existed back then, that's what Popeye was, as a cartoon series would have been. It would have been like he's beating up a bully today. What's the problem? Right. So I'm like, I want to bring that this contemporary feel. I don't want to change who Popeye is. I want him to just be modernized and polished. So stylistically, yes, I gave him a little polish, but I didn't change who he was as a character because I think it's more interesting as a writer to put Popeye in a contemporary setting. Like if you gave him, I don't know, a young person to talk to, that's gonna be funny because Popeye talks the way he talks.
Hmm.
I don't want to change that. I don't want to modernize the way he talks. I want to make it put Popeye in this new setting. So action, fighting. I'm hugely, yeah, you're right. I am a huge fan of anime. So One Punch Man is a perfect example. Put Popeye in these amazingly ridiculous circumstances, but he is world breaking. He's
Hmm.
overpowered as crap. And if you let him go and let him loose in this modern anime area, right? It fits perfectly. Popeye would fit perfectly in One Punch Man. He would fit perfectly in, My Hero Academia, all of these great fight cartoons, Dragon Ball Z. So my goal as a fan was just to do that and then make it expand the characters, let the characters grow. Um, Over the years, 50 plus years of Popeye, I don't think he was allowed to grow. He had to, be bullied or have a situation that pushed him up against the wall in order for him to take some spinach. beat the crap out of the situation and brute force his way through. And it was a success. You get the fanfare at the end. I was strong for the finish because I ate my spinach. End of episode. But it was like they kept doing that. He was never really allowed to grow
Yeah.
from that. That was his staple. People watched it. I watched it. And for some reason, I never got tired of it. Um, so
It's
this
interesting that you,
case,
sorry,
no,
go ahead.
I'll just say in this case, it started with 10 pages that they requested, did the 10 pages, and they're like, all right, now do 22 more pages. And so the story was easily expanded because I'm like, that's the goal. I want to take these characters that we all know, Olive, Popeye, Bluto,
Hmm.
Wimpy, Sweet, the whole cast, but then allow that to grow character wise, because that's what anime does. Anime, well, good anime, um, allows characters to be instantly, interesting. I don't know how the hell they do it. I do, but it's like this really cool thing that most really well written animes and mangas do, which is you, wherever the character is, you follow their journey to growing. Whether they're already powerful, like look at All Might from My Hero Academia, he's already the Superman character. But you find out he has an injury and he's not all powerful and
Hmm.
he is has this thing and he can't stay super powered for too long and he ends up losing it. The character still is growing even after all these years, and I'm like, how in the hell do I still care about All Might? I still want All Might to get his power back, but that's what good writing is. So even if it's a journey of depowering or making this character go from here to here, if you write it correctly, that character will continue to be interesting because they're on a journey.
Hmm.
They're trying to get to their next plateau of character development. So that's what I want Papa to go through, or I should say, go through. I want him to grow. I want Olive to grow. I want Bluto to grow, not just stay in the archetypes of who they've been, but introduce them to a maybe people that have never watched cartoon, young people have never seen it, never heard of them. Maybe they heard of them. Maybe they understand he eats spinach, but I don't want him to just be that same character anymore. So I want him to grow from that. In the eyes of a fan, though, it should feel good, even if it's something that takes him away from what we've known. It shouldn't feel like I'm ruining Popeye. I hate when people get attached to, or get a hold of uh, beloved characters. Bryan Singer in the X-Men movie, great example. Cannot stand what he did because I was so excited. I was an X-Men fan at that time,
Yeah.
and he gets the movie and he tells everyone on cast, "Don't read the comics. Don't
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to read the books. I don't want anyone to read. I'm going to do something new with the X-Men." And as soon as I learned that, I was like, "I hate you. I hate you.
And
How could you
everyone
do
knows
that?"
that's the classic one.
So yeah, that's my goal is to not do anything like that. I love Popeye. I love the cast. I hear their voices when I'm writing the
Hmm.
story. So it should feel rewarding and good to a fan. But the things that weren't taken care of or tackled back in the day, Sea Hag has magic. One of the first questions I was asking is like, so how does her magic work, by the way? They were like, however it needs to. I'm like, perfect. Great. I
Exactly.
get to make a magic system. So it shouldn't be offensive to a fan that says, well, Sea Hag had magic, but we never explored how it worked.
Hmm.
Why does spinach do what it does to Popeye?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, we never questioned it. We always just accepted it.
Right. So,
It's interesting that you mentioned how Popeye would fit perfectly in an anime, because even when you have those scenes with Goku powering up,
yeah.
if you think about it, Popeye has his montage of eating the spinach and having
Hmm.
his whole power up sequence. So
Hmm.
it's nothing new.
Right.
Um, but you talk about how you're balancing the legacy of Popeye,
Yeah.
and I think it's great that you're a fan because, again, like you said, sometimes someone can maybe have good intentions, but because
Right.
they're not wanting to at least refer to the resource material or the original titles, you're kind of losing the core of what the character is. So I think it's great that you're keeping that.
Yeah.
Um, for new readers, right? You're talking about how you're exploring these unanswered questions that you have as someone who is a fan. What are you most excited about for new readers? Someone who's never heard of Popeye, what are you most excited for them to experience from your title?
So that's a lot. I can focus it in on falling in love with him as a character. That would be my biggest achievement as a writer. If I can achieve a brand new reader being exposed to Popeye, the character, right, and crew, and actually successfully having them be entertained with just his personality, how he laugh. I can't get his laugh in comic. I wish I could just hit an audio button. Um, but you know, his personality. I want a new reader to say, "Wow, I like this guy." I've never seen Popeye. I've never watched car, or inspire them to say, "So this was a cartoon. This is the Popeye from the cartoons," and then they go back to the cartoons, and it feels similar,
Hmm.
not totally different. There's things from the cartoon that I'm kid you not. I tried in every conceivable creative way, something that old school Popeye, black and white Popeye would do, the voice actor would do during the cartoon. If you go back and watch, Popeye would mutter to himself, like he would be like, "Yeah, you see, I got to get around this thing," and he's not talking to any character; he's talking to himself out
Hmm.
loud. And I'm like, "Oh, that's great! I wish I can get that in the comic." But what the hell would that look like?
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. I cannot. Some things don't transfer to comic very well. But at the same time, if I can get his personality to transfer to a brand new reader and they're entertained, they like his jolly side. They like the fact that he fights against bullies. They like the fact that he eats spinach and gets powered up. Whatever it may be, that would be my one of my main goals. Make someone that has never even cared about Popeye say, "I like this. I like this guy. I like, what I'm reading. I want to know more." Because that's what the Avengers movies did. That's what all
Hmm.
of these I never read a freaking Thor book in my entire life. I was never a fan of Iron Man. I was never a fan of Captain America. And yet those movies was like, "Oh, that dude's that's pretty dope."
Hmm.
Let me go learn a little bit more about, Thor. I've never picked up a Thor book, but I remember reading it. I'm like, "Oh, that's how he talks? That's lame. I don't want to read that." Um, but come to find out, I read The God Butcher after seeing, Avengers, and I was like, "This is fantastic writing." I like Thor now, but I like the movie version first.
Hmm.
I never cared about Thor, Iron Man, or Captain America. I love those movie versions. Love them. That was like one of the first movies I bought was Ragnarok. Well, I bought Civil War, bought Avengers, but Thor. I
Hmm.
was surprised to buy Ragnarok because I was like, "Holy shit! I just bought a Thor movie. This is
Hmm.
insane. I've never once bought a Thor comic, but I love that version and I love the storytelling and the character development. But it made me go back. So hopefully I can achieve that. If I do that, everything else kind of falls into place because I'm telling new stuff. I want to tell a new story that is captivating to whoever's reading Popeye, whether they're old school fan or they're new. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. Now with this new story coming out, how many issues are we anticipating for the first arc?
five if
Five?
I'm
Perfect.
right. I think five. Five is the first run, short run, and just get people palate wet, get their feet wet in there, man. I'll see what's going on, see what I can do with the characters, and I'm not wasting any time, man. I think people that know Popeye are expecting Popeye stuff, which is if he's not doing crazy stuff, if he's not breaking reality or
Hmm.
you know punching metal and making it into car keys, you know what I mean? Something
Yeah,
stupid,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
Well, last question, because we've covered a lot, and I
cool.
definitely appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Um, really excited about the title. When is it releasing? When can readers get their hands on it, start diving into it? Obviously, there was a free comic book day kind of teaser, which was great.
yeah,
So if those watching this, you can find it. Some comic shops may still have it, but I got
yeah.
the last one at my LCS because it was very popular.
It went
It
well.
was
Yeah,
actually on my list. I was like, Popeye is the one title that I'm like, I have to pick up.
right,
Um,
right.
but for readers, looking forward to it, when is it coming out? When can they, pick it up at their LCS?
So I there's two things. I think it's coming out in August.
Hmm.
I got to be finished with the next book by July. So, but yeah, I think it comes in August, and that way, the first book will be, I think, kind of like a fat issue. That's going to be the 30 plus pages, I want to say,
Oh
close to
wow.
40 pages. And then we'll, release scheduled stuff after that. So yeah, I think in August is when it's coming out.
Very exciting.
Yes.
Well, yeah,
Yep.
I'll have to put the official date, but I think I had heard August as well,
Yeah.
when I saw the solicitations. I believe it's already on FOC though. I think people can start ordering
Oh,
theirs.
you know what? I'm tripping. I'm tripping. I'm thinking of the second book. Yeah, July, maybe the first book.
Maybe the first one? Okay.
Yeah, the first book.
So
I'm thinking of the second book. I'm sorry. That's when I get look, I gotta be done. But so
love it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, very exciting. Well, I know I'm looking forward to it. I remember watching Popeye cartoons at my grandparents' house when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I can still visualize the breaking of the can, the opening of his mouth, kind of
Right.
ingesting it, and like his body almost like inflating in different
Yes.
parts as he
Yes.
powers up. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in a new generation of storytelling. So
Yeah.
Marcus, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me. This was awesome. And yeah, I'm looking forward to when the title comes out.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I had a blast and I'm excited about the title. Again, I want fans that are classic fans to, I am changing things little, but it's on par with like giving Peter Parker from the first Spider-Man movie organic web. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, does it make sense? Yeah, his whole DNA was changed. To classic Spider-Man, oh, it's not how it is in the comic because he needs web. I know, but it's if it makes sense and you're still a fan and you're doing it from that where certain things I'm gonna nudge, but it's Popeye. I don't want anyone to be afraid to say, well, I'm trying to there's nothing wrong with Popeye. So that's my take. If you're a fan of Popeye, you should be okay with this, you know, modern take of him. If you know, if not you, I had one lady who's like, I should not be attracted to Popeye. I am not like seeing him with muscles. I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's what's
Like,
gonna have to
I'm
happen.
sorry I ignited something in you.
I'm like, I'm sorry. I wanted to give him some abs. She's
She
like,
was
that's
mad
just,
because you unlocked something in
you know what I mean? I'm like, listen, I'm sorry. It just never was explored. He's
her.
obviously strong as crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, he has
I
old
mean,
man strength.
he eats his veggies, right?
Exactly.
That's what they tell everybody growing up. You got to eat your veggies, you get
You
big and
know,
strong.
exactly. So I'm like, I'm sorry. It's had to happen. He has abs. So, but little things like that. It's gonna make sense. But yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time out and asking great questions. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Marcus, and I look forward to reviewing the title. Take care.
Definitely. All right. Take care, man.
Bye bye.